The situation now with Kavanaugh's confirmation evokes memories of a different confrontation that played out some 27 years ago. In 1991, Anita Hill was a law professor at the University of Oklahoma who came forward publicly to accuse a former boss, then Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas, of sexual harassment. Yesterday, the New York Times published an opinion column from Hill with her own prescriptions for what the central figures in the current confrontation could learn from 1991. Anita Hill is now a professor of law at Brandeis University and an author focusing on issues of gender, race, and social policy. And she joins me now. Anita Hill, welcome back to the NewsHour. Just to look at what's going on right now, the Senate Judiciary Committee leaders are saying they want Professor Blasey Ford to testify, that they don't believe an FBI investigation is necessary. Their own staff is investigating, and they're making it sound as if they're going to go ahead whether she's there or not. Under those circumstances, should she testify?
You know, that's a decision that she has to make for herself. My belief is that without an investigation, there cannot be an effective hearing.
So when the senators on the Judiciary Committee say their own staff is carrying out an investigation, you're saying that's not sufficient?
I'm saying it's not sufficient, not because I know what their staff's qualifications are, but I doubt that they are qualified to carry out this investigation in a neutral fashion.
Well, let's go back to 1991. I want to show our audience, this is an excerpt from the confirmation hearings, Clarence Thomas hearings that year. You were being questioned at this point by then Senator Arlen Specter. Let's listen.
You testified this morning in response to Senator Biden that the most embarrassing question involved, this is not too bad, women's large breasts. That's a word we use all the time. That was the most embarrassing aspect of what Judge Thomas had said to you.
No, the most embarrassing aspect was his description of the acts of these individuals, these women, the acts that those particular people would engage in. It wasn't just the breast, it was the continuation of his story about what happened in those films with the people with this characteristic, physical characteristic.
With the physical characteristic of?
The large breast.
So, Professor Hill, what was your assessment of the senator's questioning of you as you look back on it?
Well, as I look back on it, I think that there is clearly evidence that the staffers should not be the ones designing this hearing at this point. Senator Specter had already indicated prior to my testimony that he believed Clarence Thomas, that he did not go into that hearing with an open mind. And what followed were questions that reflected that he did not have an open mind and was not interested really in pursuing the truth of my testimony, but was more interested in discrediting me.
Well, as you know, I'm sure what these Republican senators on the committee right now are saying is there have already been half a dozen FBI investigations of Judge Kavanaugh, and they question whether they're going to learn much more. In other words, they're not inclined to expect that anything new is going to come out.
And the senators have already indicated that they have made up their mind about this individual. All of this, to me, just points to the fact that they are not prepared to have this hearing. If they don't understand the difference between a general investigation by the FBI and a specific investigation into the allegations that have been raised about this sexual assault or potential sexual assault that occurred, if they don't understand that difference, then they are really not prepared to go into this phase of the hearing.
If it turns out, Professor Hill, that there is no way to verify Professor Blasey Ford's allegation, what are we left with here? If there's no evidence that surfaces, no account that surfaces to back her up or refute what she said?
You know, one of the things that I won't assume is the idea that there is no evidence. Because I am not a professional that does these kind of investigations. When you get a professional involved, they will know the questions to ask, they will know the places to go, they will know the people to call on as witnesses to complete what is a thorough investigation. So there's a lot more that we can learn. I think so often we fall into this trap of saying, oh, this is a he said, she said situation. And that rarely is the case. There is very often, and most often I would say, ways that testimony can be corroborated, either through other individuals or other circumstances that are similar. And we need to let that play out and to make sure that we have turned over every stone to get to the facts of this situation. I think it's in the best interest of both Dr. Blasey Ford as well as the interest of Judge Kavanaugh. But I certainly think it is in the best interest of the American public and the court.
Given what you just said, I want to ask, in this current partisan, divided environment we are living in this country, is it possible for something like this, for an allegation to come up when someone is being nominated to an important position and for them to get a fair hearing?
It's possible if people are willing to put aside partisanship for higher ideals, for the betterment of the court, or for what is in the best interest of the public. You know, I will say this, when individuals come forward and raise claims, they do so at great risk. We know from the information that has been published and the story that has followed since Dr. Blasey was revealed as the person who wrote the letter and gave it to her representative. We know that, in fact, there have been threats to her life. We know that she is now in hiding because of those threats. We can't promise her an outcome in a fair hearing, but what we ought to be able to promise her is a fair hearing and a thorough investigation. And I think it's a reflection not only on this particular hearing, but also a reflection on the ability of individuals who are representatives to do their job, especially when it comes to the Supreme Court. I think it's ironic that we have senators who are deciding about who is going to sit on the highest court, but they can't really put a partisanship aside long enough to put together a fair hearing to get to the truth about this situation.
Professor Anita Hill, we thank you very much.
Thank you.